Hi, welcome to ILTV's Insider. I'm Adam Scott Bellos, founder and the CEO of the Israel Innovation Fund, and your host for this evening. What's going on in the streets of the Middle East? Well, we are here to discuss all of that. Tonight's topic, the post-national celebration reality. After 3 months of protests in the streets over the judicial reforms proposed by the current government, last Thursday in Jerusalem, we saw one of the most significant right-wing or pro-reform protests with over 200,000 people in attendance. Now, the majority of the people at the event described it as about 20% secular and 80% national religious, meaning that the base of the protests were not Likud voters. With this continued escalated national divide being perpetuated not only by Israeli political leaders, but also political activists, what does the country's future look like? Will Netanyahu or one of his partners look to collapse the government in favor of something more stable? Well, we are here to discuss all of that tonight and much, much more. Tonight, I have two very special guests with me. On my right, I have Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld, a political advisor and social impact consultant. Melissa has been a featured speaker at the United Nations, the White House, and Capitol Hill. And Blake Flayton, a weekly columnist for the Jewish Journal Los Angeles and an Oleh Hadash living in Tel Aviv. He can be followed at Blake Flayton, and Dr. Kronfeld can be followed at Emma J. Okay, guys, so what's really on my mind right now is that Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party is polling at somewhere between 11 to 15 seats right now after his announcement right before Passover started. And Benny Gantz's blue and white is now jumping to 28 seats in the polls. What does this say about what's going on with the political landscape? To me, it looks like there's a possible new, real, viable center bloc emerging. At the same time, there's talk that a partner or Netanyahu himself might want to collapse this government for something stable. Blake, I'll start with you. How do you feel about that?
Well, personally, I'm thrilled about the numbers that are coming out from recent polling that Likud is hemorrhaging seats. It is hemorrhaging mandates that it will hypothetically get in the next election or is predicted to get in the next election. And we see these votes mainly, if trends are accurate, going toward Benny Gantz's party, going to him and Gideon Saar's partnership within the Knesset. And we're also seeing a drop from Yesh Atid, by the way, and we could only suspect, because there hasn't really been a large increase in prospective mandates for Meretz and Labor, that these votes are these voters are also going over to Gantz as well. So I think that is the reason why you're seeing a strengthening of the center. It's because people on both the center left and center right have had enough of the Mishigas, have had enough of the Balagan. They're angry that this government tried to impose judicial overhaul in such a radical fashion, in such a partisan fashion. They don't like the warnings about civil war. They don't like the heightened temperature around the country, and they want an alternative to Benjamin Netanyahu that they feel is going to have the best capability to bring all sides together, and that's what I think is happening right now.
Dr. Kronfeld, how do you feel about what's going on right now in terms of the major shift in polling?
I don't see a shift at all. Last time I checked, Benny Gantz's party has been collecting seats in the past, 500 elections, and he still has yet to make it to the prime ministership or really make an impact in this government.
Well, I mean, he has collectively constantly increased his...
But he still hasn't made it anywhere. He stayed exactly where he is, which is a person of little consequence with a fairly large ego, hoping to make it where those around him consistently do, whether it's Naftali or the Likud with Bibi and Itamar. I think what's one of the things that they teach us when you do a PhD in politics is the first thing they tell you is never predict the future and never look at polls. And I strongly suggest that we take a step back and consider polls are a momentary reaction. It does not reflect what people think and feel in days coming up to elections, nor what people often do inside the polling booths. And we've seen this time and time again across the world, not least amongst which was when people said there was no way Trump was going to win, and he won in a landslide. What I think we need to consider is that there is a strong reaction right now in the politics among people, and the polls are reflecting how people are feeling at this moment. That doesn't have any bearing on what people are going to feel a month from now, a week from now, a year from now.
I disagree, because I think when you look at the way polling goes within Israel itself, it's different from other countries such as the United States, such as the months of polling before Donald Trump was elected. If you look at Israel itself, we see a consistent pattern throughout Israeli history, and that is that when the polls begin to show that the public is dissatisfied with the government, when the polls begin to show that there is a clear indication for which way the winds are blowing, which politicians are beginning to become more favored over the others, then there is a shuffling of political priorities, and ultimately the government falls. The government cannot sustain itself if it does not have the support and I would say excited support from the population. And by the way, this government certainly does not have excited
I would beg
support.
to differ. I would say I would just say just a week ago, we had more people than ever come out and say, and I was amongst them, we will not be ignored, those of us on the right. We will not be ignored, those of us who work with and for Otzma Yehudit and who worked very hard to get Itamar Ben-Gvir where he is today. We will not be ignored, nor will we be sidelined by a woke mafia who has no idea what judicial reform actually means and has failed to achieve anything in the year that they had a coalition government, which included a bunch of radical leftists, communists, a traitor to Likud, and a whole heap of Arab terrorists.
Right now, the Otzma Yehudit list and the current government ran on a platform of keeping Israelis safe, and it also ran on a platform of lowering the cost of living and making it more affordable to live in Israel. Those were their main two priorities. Neither of those things have happened, and voters are feeling it, by the way. Voters are feeling it, and they're
100%.
expressing it in the polls. And by the way, if you say that Otzma Yehudit voters want to be heard, that's great. But as we saw from the pro-judicial overhaul rally in Jerusalem, they're sort of the only people being heard. The working class base of Likud was not there. The Haredim was not there. The moderate right that is essential for the right being able to form a coalition
I was there.
were not there. They were not there. The Haredim were given instructions not to go.
I do want to.
They don't. The Haredim and the
dozens.
mainstream right of this country does not see this judicial reform and the current radical actions of this government as a hill worthy of dying on. The only
we
people.
don't need everyone to die on the hill. We just need a few people.
And you're going to
make
have
it
a
happen,
government of 15
to live on the
seats.
hill and to keep. And you know what? That's fine, because what has happened in the past year is that the left proved that they were incapable of creating a center, creating a left, or achieving anything. The last two prime ministers that we have rank among the two of the three shortest prime ministerships in the history of Israel. The third being someone who only took over for 54 days until the next election. So I think that says everything I need to know about the left, is that if you have two of the three shortest prime ministerships ever, then the agenda and the goals and the priorities and the principles of the left reflect how minimal they're.
I actually want to talk about that, and not that wasn't excellent debating right there. No, that was absolutely beautiful. No, it was absolutely beautiful and perfect. But you guys bring up a really good point. I do disagree with what you said about Benny Gantz, though. I just want to kind of throw that out there. I do think that people have been writing him off as he is growing a much slower type of movement and galvanizing the center block. I think it's incorrect to write him off. But one of the interesting things that you did bring up was the time served as prime ministers as part of the left. And I'll throw Bennett into that only because of the coalition that he made, not because I really associate him with the left. But one of the things that's very interesting about what has happened with the judicial reforms and the protests on both sides is that Yair Lapid was kind of the voice for getting people to the streets. But the only thing that we are seeing is a complete drop in his popularity, all moving to Gantz. And I do find the point that Dr. Kronfeld brought up interesting, is that the left is having a major problem and a very hard time consolidating their voter base. And Blake, I know that you're quite active with the Labor Party, if I'm correct. You're out in most of the protests every week. What could you say, from being from that national camp, is the biggest challenges that you guys have right now?
Well, first of all, I will say this about the global left or the global liberal faction in many different countries.
Would you associate the left in Israel with the global left? I'm surprised.
No, I'm saying the left as in multiple countries. So like, let's say the Democratic Party of the United States